I own about 2 pairs of pants that I rotate every other day. This guy has a high-tech battle armor suit for every day of the year. He's Iron Man, folks. The suit is him and he is the suit.
Told you.
I see you're confused, since he nearly made it to triple digits in terms of the mark number of his suits. Yes, it's true, during Tony Stark's time in the MCU, he wore a wide array of various battle suits, each slightly different from the next. Whether it be the Mark I or the Mark 101, Tony loved to put a little flair into each of his special projects in order to save the world. Which were his best? Well, let's find out right now. There is something to be said for nostalgia and iconic status. And though this rust bucket may not look too pretty, it certainly got the job done. But I remember that, as Obadiah Stane and my friend Tim for some reason like to say, Tony built it in a cave with nothing but a box of scraps. Then you couple that with the fact that he had to trick the people actively watching him that he wasn't making a giant robot suit. Knowing all of that makes the Mark I a pretty impressive feat of engineering. Compared to later models, however, it doesn't even compare. Tony doesn't quite have the same mobility with the Mark I as he does with other suits. It is bullet resistant and has enough force behind it to knock down doors. It's complete with flamethrowers and a rocket-powered grenade that appears to be activated via lawnmower pull cord. Powered by the first ever successful miniaturized arc reactor, as Tony himself even said the suit only had a couple minutes of juice in it. It's the element of surprise that really helps Tony escape the 10 rings. With any other model suit, it's likely Tony could have strolled out of there, twirling a cane all the while. The Mark I had one glorious flight in it, and Tony used it as his final push to escape after destroying all of his weapons that the 10 rings had acquired. The flight was more of a launch that ended with Tony crashing in the desert with the pieces of the Mark I falling from the sky around him. Though the suit would later serve as the inspiration for the Ironmonger armor,
Where do you think you're going?
this first design is all about what it would lead to after helping one of the world's greatest heroes become fully realized. Thanos could likely crush it into a hunky metal ball and take it bowling. Known as the prodigal son, I kinda hate the Mark 42 armor featured in Iron Man 3. It gets taken down by a freaking semi-truck for Pete's sake. And yes, I know what you're thinking. Hey, why don't you try getting hit by a semi-truck and see how many pieces you break into? I get it. But Tony has been able to survive being hit by moons, and a really angry green scientist in other versions of his armor. Iron Man 3 is all about who Tony is outside of the suit. He doesn't need a suit of armor to prove that he truly is Iron Man. He takes on bad guys through much of the film without even wearing a suit, and I think the joke of the Mark 42 is that it's probably Tony's worst design in a long time. It highlights Tony's ability as a hero though, because it shows what he can do creatively with such a piece of garbage. After implanting devices in his arms, Tony is able to call the suit to him piece by piece from anywhere in the world. He can also control the full suit while not in it.
They all made it.
He did do some incredible things with it, like save Pepper as well as a group of fallen government officials. But at the end of the day, the best thing this suit did was blow up. And even that didn't kill the main villain. The Mark 42 was what happens when Tony gets bored. And if he had other options at the time, I think it would be somewhere around his 41st choice.
You happy now?
The Mark II armor is certainly an improvement over the Mark I. It was definitely a giant leap closer to the look we are used to seeing. Lacking a paint job, this was Tony's first suit he was able to fly in. For the most part, the suit was just used as a prototype until the next version could be improved upon. This is how Tony discovered some issues. For example, try not to land on a multi-level structure, as you'll go crashing through the floors and destroy a priceless car. Secondly, don't fly too close to the moon, as that ice buildup is a real pain. Luckily, this knowledge wound up coming in handy when fighting Ironmonger later, but it nearly cost Tony his life on the first go-around. It should be noted that the Mark II is the suit that Rhodey stole from Tony's place in Iron Man 2, and eventually became the basis for the first War Machine armor. It's definitely a technological marvel, but its kinks and unreliability put it pretty low on a list of Tony Stark's first choices for a rowdy Saturday night.
I told you to shut it down.
The Mark 46 armor featured in Civil War is definitely not one of Tony's best, but it's still a pretty cool piece of hardware. This is especially true in the way he puts it on. And no, I'm not talking about that little watch that turns into a glove for about 10 seconds. No, the Mark 46 armor has all the standard upgrades that the earlier models had. But it's so low on this list because how easy it's beaten. Essentially, a couple punches from 2 super soldiers really put this armor out of commission. Cap was essentially able to take away Tony's ability to fly, and easily took out his targeting system. At the end of the day, Bucky and Cap are 2 good fighters, but something tells me if this armor goes down that easily, it wouldn't stand much of a chance against some foes who pack just a little bit heavier of a punch. The Mark V armor is pretty cool, mostly because it is stored in a suitcase. Mark V was really the first time we saw Tony get creative with the way he puts on his suit. 5 had all the standard upgrades of suits before it, with slightly more convenience in a pinch. Overall, the armor looks cool and functions properly, but it's hard to deny that it was nearly destroyed by a shirtless Russian dude with a whip. Whiplash tore this armor apart, to the point where Tony's fingers were sticking out of the gauntlet. Usually, Tony is the one to have the drop on his enemies, but in this case, it seemed that Ivan Vanko was able to do a lot of damage to a very high-tech suit. Plus, seeing some of the other ways Tony developed to put his suit on, a suitcase really becomes not all that special. This is the Icon, baby. Hot Rod Red and Gold. After working out the kinks from the Mark II, Tony created this masterpiece capable of fighting the world's greatest terrorists, and a really jealous friend of his dad's. Now, this suit isn't perfect, as Stain is able to tear it apart, but it did improve things like the icing problem, which led to a turning point in the battle. It's got high-tech targeting systems and missiles capable of completely destroying fully loaded tanks. It took on 2 state-of-the-art fighter jets, and most importantly, it revealed Iron Man to the world. The Mark III will forever go down as one of the images that people think of when they think of the birth of the MCU, and for that it gets some style points. One of the only special things I or anyone knows about the Mark IV suit is that it has a filtration system for when Tony can't exactly find the nearest bathroom. The Mark IV outside of that is remarkably similar to the Mark III. It has very few updates and upgrades, and honestly gets its butt kicked by the Mark II. Granted, Rhodey operating the Mark II was how you say sober. And Tony in the Mark IV was how you say not. Besides his incredible aim, destroying champagne bottles and watermelons, I can't really think of a spectacular thing the suit has done. Maybe survive being launched into a fireplace, but even then, that's a stretch. There's not much that can really be said about this next suit. That's the Mark 47 armor featured in Spider-Man Homecoming.
No.
The only real action this suit saw was rescuing Spider-Man from drowning, and helping hold a ferry cut in half together. Now, it is equipped with several other rocket engines that helped fix the torn boat, but outside of that, we don't see the suit do a whole lot. Tony is able to remote pilot it from halfway around the world, which is definitely a cool feature.
Here.
And given its Mark number, I imagine it has some of the same upgrades as the suit seen prior. It certainly looks cool, and Tony makes quite an entrance surprising Peter. But overall, I would say the suit is really nothing special. The final suit worn by Tony in Iron Man 2 is the Mark VI armor. This armor is famous for being the first one powered by the new and improved arc reactor. Tony's old reactor was giving him palladium poisoning, slowly killing him.
Trust me, I know I'm good at this stuff.
Leading to drunk tirades and ultimately dangerous behavior. Tony had to synthesize an entirely new element in an impressive amount of time that really made Jarvis shut up, which was then used as the core to an insanely powerful and non-poisonous arc reactor. Due to this new power source, the Mark VI could handle some great upgrades. It was no longer just completely torn apart by electrically charged whips, but instead, along with War Machine, took out an entire battalion of hammer drones. Perhaps the most impressive addition to the Mark VI is Tony's laser beam weapon. With a quick spin, Tony cuts everything in the circle around him in half. Granted, he can only use it once, but it essentially ended that part of the battle in an instant.
I think you should lead with that next time.
Lucky for Tony, the Mark VII armor has a pretty incredible ability to catch things. Unfortunately, he had to skip the spinning rims.
Then skip the spinning rims, we're on the clock.
This is the suit that caught Tony when Loki threw him off the top of Avengers Tower. He then proceeded to use it to fight the Chitauri in the Battle of New York. This suit showed an incredible amount of endurance and weapons that genuinely make it one of Tony's most impressive, even to this day. It is loaded with rockets that come out of just about every part of the suit. He used it to destroy a flying Leviathan from the inside. He took out incredible numbers of Chitauri, and ultimately used it to save New York. One of the most impressively surprising things about the suit is how long it was able to sustain Tony in space. It's likely that Marks 1 through 6 would have exploded immediately after entering the vacuum of space, but the Mark 7 kept one of the world's greatest heroes alive. This shows incredible quality in the construction of the suit. When Tony and the rest of the Avengers went to Africa to confront Ultron and the twins, he wore a little number called the Mark 43. This was the first suit Tony built after he blew up all of his others at the end of Iron Man 3. Nothing like showing your love in the form of destroying all your security just for a cool fireworks display. Needless to say, it has all the gadgets. The most impressive thing about this is how easily it takes out Ultron, or at least the shell of Ultron at the time. Unfortunately, this suit is most known as the suit Tony wore under an exponentially cooler suit. This one, however, still gets the job done. It's kind of understated how powerful the Mark 45 suit is. This is the suit Tony dons for the final confrontation with his biggest mistake in the form of Ultron. It's the classic case of your robot son losing it and dropping the country of Sokovia out of the sky. You know that old tale. But back to the suit. Sure, it flies, packs a punch, wrecks some anonymous robots. But this suit really displayed impressive levels of power. Using just the repulsor in his chest, Tony is able to superheat the entire core of the fallen country. Following this, Thor was able to absolutely obliterate the makeshift meteor. Then, of course, the pieces began to fall on Tony himself. The fact that Tony survived this ordeal is a real testament to how strong the suit is. Granted, while the suit is cool, it definitely wasn't Tony's best invention in the Battle of Sokovia, given that Vision was just flying around phasing through everything and wrecking shop. Honestly, Vision kinda makes most of Tony's suits look like children's toys. It's hard to pick just one, so this entire entry goes to the fleet of suits known as the House Party Protocol. What do you get when you combine an insomniac genius billionaire playboy philanthropist and an acute paranoia for the incoming end of the world? You get just about the greatest collection of weaponized suits anyone could ask for.
Everybody needs a hobby.
This flying legion of Iron Men is composed of various models of suits, all with a unique touch to differentiate them from each other. Which is ironic, considering that they're all controlled simultaneously by Tony's sophisticated artificial intelligence Jarvis. You have Igor, a sturdy machine that was capable of stabilizing the entire falling oil rig. The Igor suit is so strong that during its introduction, fans actually thought it was the Hulkbuster. There's also special suits like Red Snapper and Heartbreaker, which tear apart extremist fighters like cotton candy. In total, there were probably somewhere between 30 and 40 suits on the battlefield at once. It really was a sight to see, and I know it was cathartic for Tony to blow them all up, but you have to think they could have been put to better use than that. The Mark 50 was the first nanotech designed suit that Tony invented and was first seen in Avengers Infinity War. This is an incredible technological marvel. Granted, it's one that Shuri and Black Panther were miles ahead of, but who's counting? This suit is made of nanotech that is all stored in a housing unit on Tony's chest. It can use the nanites to instantly form new weapons like blades, rocket-powered punching machines, and extra repulsors. Tony even survived a direct hit from a moon in the Mark 50.
You throw another moon at me.
The one drawback is that as the nanites get punched away from damage in fights, Tony has to repurpose them from other locations in order to cover his butt. We saw this lead to a near fatal mistake during his first fight with Thanos. After Thanos had taken off a good chunk of armor, Tony's midsection became exposed, and Thanos impaled him with his own blade. Besides that one weakness though, the suit is top of the line.
Nanotech, you like it?
Veronica, aka the Hulkbuster, is one of Tony's most impressive suits of armor. It's probably because the design of it was in part contributed by Dr. Banner, the man who it was specifically designed to fight against. The Hulkbuster armor is so cool that you can wear another normal suit of armor while operating inside of it. It takes several arc reactors, not just in the chest but in some of the joints as well, to power this behemoth of a preventative measure. The whole purpose of Veronica is to be able to subdue one of the most powerful monsters in the known universe, the Hulk. This guy was king of the freaking gladiators on an alien planet, for crying out loud. What's even more incredible is that this was actually achieved. In Age of Ultron, after the Scarlet Witch sent the Hulk on a rampage like no other, and took down most of the other Avengers, it was up to Tony to stop his friend Bruce from hurting anyone.
Stand down.
Now, I'm not going to say no one got hurt, but regardless, it's still impressive. The Hulkbuster is complete with insane strength and repulsor blasts much more effective than other suits. The best part is that as the Hulk tears away the suit piece by piece, it is followed by a floating first aid station that constantly replenishes it. This suit is so effective that it basically took the Hulk's place in the Battle of Wakanda when Bruce chose to pilot it. Avengers Endgame saw what I believe to be the most powerful version of the Iron Man suit. This saw the perfected version of the nanotech suit seen in Avengers Infinity War. I guess Tony did have 5 years to work out the kinks so as not to get stabbed again. It's unfortunate that it couldn't protect against Infinity Stone radiation, but I really doubt any of his suits could. Regardless, Tony was able to take on Thanos more successfully, and cleverly used the nanotechnology to steal the stones from him at the perfect time. He survives being buried in the Avengers compound, and manifests new weapons unlike anything we had seen before. It truly is the peak of Tony's inventing, and him passing on inside his best suit is really just poetic justice.
Iron Man.
Whether he is saving the world or crashing his own party, Tony always wears the nicest suits. The several we've seen him wear in the MCU are the best example of how a person without powers can be super. Just one thing, can anyone tell me why he named them all Mark?